Crysis 4 is a game that I want to see made at some point here in the very near future, because Crysis, guys, is a franchise that I found was one of my favorites to play. You know, back in the day on the Xbox 360 days, I really enjoyed playing Crysis. It was a game that kind of was somewhat transcendent as far as the graphics were concerned. Of course, especially with the first Crysis on PC, people always were talking about that. I remember we would talk about, oh, can your computer run Crysis? And everyone wanted to have the best gaming PC possible, to have the best graphics, or be able to push Crysis to its very limits. And that's exactly what really started a significant following of Crysis and the franchise. Then you had Crysis 2, which I absolutely loved, and Crysis 3, which was still pretty good, and the graphics were even better than Crysis 2 in Crysis 3. I don't think anything really matched the original Crysis, but nonetheless, Crytek, the developers of Crysis, of course, have hinted at possibly bringing Crysis back. They have also, of course, are the ones who are working on Hunt Showdown, which of course already came out quite some time ago, and so we've got a really good feel for Hunt Showdown. Really great. That's why I would trust Crytek with making a new Crysis game, and I think that it's really deserved at this point. Like, we really want this at this point. Now, in this article that was written in 2012, even though this was written in 2012, guys, I still found this a very good article for even today, because the next Crysis won't be called Crysis 4. Free-to-play is our inevitable future, says Crytek. The Crysis saga will endure beyond Crysis 3's culminating events, but not under the name Crysis 4, Crytek has revealed. Speaking to Eurogamer, Crytek CEO Savat Yurli discussed the future of the visually voluptuous franchise beyond Crysis 3 and mentioned a future free-to-play version of Crysis. I wouldn't name it Crysis 4 at this stage because it would be misleading, he said. We want to finalize Prophet's story, and Crysis 4 would imply the story just moves on. But we are excited about the DNA of Crysis and of the franchise. There can be literally tons of titles out there within the franchise. Unlike Far Cry, this time around, we feel very flexible about Crysis. So normally Crytek would already be beginning pre-production on the next Crysis, but Yurli says the next iteration's radical direction could mean more of a lull between it and Crysis 3. Now, we do know, guys, that obviously there was Crysis 3, and then you had Crysis, what was the name of it? Crysis Warface or something like that, which I did not even play that one. Obviously, that was kind of like a side, side story to the main Crysis. I guess you would say the main Crysis narrative that they were kind of pushing for. A free-to-play Crysis, guys, in today, right now, would be absolutely huge. I'm telling you, it would be huge. A free-to-play Crysis game could, really be something like a Fortnite or like a Apex Legends, if you think about it. I'm not saying necessarily going the Battle Royale route, but if you just made it a free-to-play game right now, Crysis would be huge. Because we want to make this something much more radical and new, we're looking at it as a bit more of a long-term thing, Yurli explained. It's too early to talk about it for these reasons. Yurli equipped an equally strong silencer on any details surrounding the free-to-play Crysis project, as its infancy prevented any solid information from emerging. We do have a plan for a free-to-play version of Crysis, but how this looks and when this will be done, whether this is the next one or the next one, is to be decided. He said, I believe free-to-play is our inevitable future. I believe there are free-to-play titles out there that can be storytelling and cooperative with your friends and competitive with your friends. It's all possible. The business model is independent from the way you design games. It's a very important thing. People always make these things independent, but it's actually completely independent. So, look, guys, a Crysis free-to-play game would be absolutely huge. Now, even if it's not called Crysis 4, I think at this point, now I'm pretty sure the Crysis Warface or whatever it was called, I don't believe the sales were that great for it. And that being said, though, Yurley is basically stating that even if it wasn't, the next one, which obviously we had the Crysis Warfighter or Warface, whatever it was, the next one might very well be the Crysis 4 that we're talking about. That would be like a Crysis free-to-play game. I would honestly make it just called Crysis or Crysis, Evolved or whatever, and make it a free-to-play game where you have maybe, some stories or like some, stories explain what's going on with Prophet or what's been happening. And then you also have a free-to-play multiplayer, and then who knows, maybe even a battle royale. Who knows? But I do think that they're kind of testing these things out with Hunt Showdown. We kind of see from Hunt Showdown it being primarily a multiplayer experience. You're kind of seeing what they're trying different things out, and maybe they implement a lot of the things that work well in Crysis in that universe. That would be something that I would absolutely love to have a real conversation about, because at this point, where is Crysis 4? Well, this was written in 2012. So Yurley said this back in 2012. I mean, we're talking like 8 years ago, close to 8 years ago, guys. And so obviously games take a long time to develop. They take a long time to make, and obviously Crytek was working on Hunt Showdown after, kind of working on a bunch of Crysis projects. Hunt Showdown was kind of their new thing. I would assume that they're going to be coming back to Crysis here within, I would say, probably the next couple of years. We could very well see a Crysis 4 or a Crysis free-to-play game. Let me know what you guys think. Would you guys like to see another Crysis sequel or even a side story, whatever it might be? Do you want to see Crysis return to gaming consoles, to PCs and such, and have another chance at fresh life, maybe into the next generation of consoles? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.